everyone, my name is Padmini Nidumolu and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women. It's a common platform for women across the world to come together to share their journeys with each other, to seek in secured, in a psychologically safe environment, and also to celebrate each other's success, to celebrate those women who have had incredible journeys and who not just thrived, I mean, not survived, but thrived through their journeys. And in addition, we launched a project or an initiative called LIA100, also Lean and Agile 100, which is an effort to bring the stories of 100 women across the world, 100 among many, because we know there are many more incredible women out there. But this humble project is bringing 100 in the first wave. And this is an attempt to really talk to them and understand their journey and how they got to where they are today. And what does that story look like and how can we get motivated and inspired with that? In that effort, today we have the incredible Ellen Grove from Canada, who probably does not need an introduction. I think I'll be surprised if any of us do not know who she is and the body of work she has done. But a few words about Ellen. Ellen is an Agile coach and a trainer who helps teams to better work by coaching them to create the ideal circumstances in which they can thrive and work in a most productive way. Her Agile coaching practices are founded in over 15 years of experience leading software testing, development, and implementation. She has a huge passion for exploratory software testing and user-centered design and a background in community organization. She presents frequently at Agile conferences in Canada and abroad, and she's the lead organizer of several national and international Agile conferences. Most recently, Agile Coach Camp Canada, Play4Agile North America, and Agile India. And as we all know, she is currently an interim managing director of the Agile Alliance. Welcome, Ellen. Very nice to have you here. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you, Padmini. I'm delighted to be here.
It's an honor, Ellen. And many of us have seen you in action and you've been engaged very closely with conferences. And of course, now you're the interim director of Agile Alliance with a huge body of work behind where you are today. But let's start with what brought you to Agile in the first place?
So it's interesting. I started off, started off my tech career, which wasn't even my first career, in software testing. And I had the luck to fall into a couple of teams that, even though we didn't call what we were doing Agile, we worked in really agile ways, very small, closely knit teams focused on what are we trying to do and how do we help each other to do it. And, you know, sort of less, I'll just say less focus on process and roles and all of this. And when I was working on the second team like that I worked on, it was a startup that had been bought and then sucked into a very large telecommunications company. This was in the early 2000s, and we were sort of looking at what we were doing, and there was this agile thing going on in extreme programming, and we were sort of looking at it going, I wonder if we should be doing some of those things. Maybe we should be doing some of those things. But the big company that we had been absorbed into came out with, this is the one true way that all teams in our organization will do software. And we looked at it and said, we can't do that. That's great if you have 500 people and you're releasing every 2 years. We have 20 people we release to our clients every 6 months. That process won't fit us, but we had to come up with a plausible explanation of what it was we were going to do, rather than just say, we're not using your stupid process because it's stupid. And that's how I got seriously into learning about what Agile meant, what an Agile way of working was. And on that team, you know, I started off from, hey, what kind of training does my team need in order for us to start working this way, to becoming an internal coach in the organization, as other teams looked at how we were doing things and saying, hey, we need some of that too. We need to get more responsive. We need to be able to deliver sooner. We need to work differently with our customers. The fascinating thing for me about it, though, was I mentioned that software was my second career. Before that, I worked in social services. I worked with people who are developmentally disabled, into helping them to integrate into their community, and that had been a passion of mine for a really long time. And it struck me that what is really at the heart of Agile is very much the same. It's around building community around common goals. It's about how do we organize people to accomplish something that they all care about. In the context of Agile, it's usually, it's usually, hey, we're building software, we're building a service, or we're building a solution. We're doing something in a business context, although not limited to that. But it's how do we become a community around solving that problem? So it kind of amused me that all of those skills from my previous life were suddenly directly applicable to my high-tech career. And so that's how I got started. And once you start working that way, it's really painful to go back to an old way of working where we have big cumbersome processes and we don't talk to each other, and we try to coordinate by feeding our bits upward and hoping that they all come together. And so since that time, I have been working in helping organizations of all sorts of different kinds to transition to working in an Agile way, to adopt Agile principles and practices, because I honestly believe it just makes more sense. And particularly over the past the past 18 months, it's become incredibly clear to all of us that life is a lot less predictable than we'd like to think it is. And this has really elevated the importance of being able to think about what we're trying to do, whether it's work or whether it's planning our personal lives, even in a more agile way, because things are so uncertain, because the circumstances around us are changing. We need to be resilient, we need to be adaptable, we need to be responsive to change, but we still need to be able to make plans and decide to do things, and do that in a reasonably structured way, not just make it all up as we go along. And that's so agile thinking has become incredibly valuable.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think, very well said. I think that's probably the thing to do and the way to go, especially in the pandemic. Something that has set all of us, to kind of move into an unpredictable space. You mentioned you support organizations in the in the capacity of a coach. When you go into an organization, of course, there's bound to be resistance and there's bound to be apprehensions, right? People resist change. How do you typically address that? Being a very agile person yourself, when you see the resistance, what's your first instinct and how do you address that?
So my approach tends to be, a lot of that fear, a lot of that resistance tends to come from, you're here to tell us what to do. And the longer that I've been doing this, I mean, when in the early days, I was very enthusiastic. It's like, I'm here to teach you about how to do all the agile things, and we'll do some Scrum training, and we'll talk about Kanban, and I'll give you all these are the ways you can do it. And as I have become older and hopefully wiser and more experienced, the more I realize that approach doesn't necessarily serve me or anybody else well. And so I like to talk to people about, what are the problems you're trying to solve? What is it that's important? What is it we're trying to do here? Is it that you're worried that you're not getting feedback soon enough from your work, and you need to figure out, how do I involve my customers or my clients in the process so that we can check as we go and make sure that we're building the right thing the right way? Is it that we're having problems with building things the right way, that we're going off and building things and then discovering that they're brittle and not extensible, or the quality is a problem? So how do we put in that kind of feedback? How do we make sure we have the right approaches and the right practices to solve that kind of problem? And, you know, the irony is actually the longer that I work as an Agile coach, the less that I talk about Agile specifically, because I think sometimes some of the buzzwords and some of the language gets in the way. I like to really have a conversation with individuals and with teams that are focused on what are the problems that you're trying to solve? Who are the people whose needs you're trying to meet? You know, what are the things that would show you that you are doing a better job of doing those things? And then we can have a conversation about how we apply Agile approaches and practices to achieving those ends.
Yeah.
You know, you need,
Yeah.
you're not pleasing your customers. Excellent. Let's figure out how to bring them into the process. Let's figure out how we talk differently with them up front.
Right.
You've
Yeah.
got quality issues. Okay, let's figure out how do we test differently so that we're testing all the way through, not just at the end.
Right.
And when you phrase it that way, people tend to be like, oh, you're here to help me solve a problem. I can get on board with that. I want to do better.
Yes,
It's,
absolutely. In fact, I think the key takeaway there is not to intimidate them by positioning yourself as somebody who is there to change, but rather you're in the problem solving space, right? One
mm,
of them, but you're shining light on the dark areas. That's all you're doing. The doers are the teams and the organizations themselves.
yeah, yeah. Shining light on the dark areas, offering ideas sometimes about here's another way you could think about this, but also encouraging making that problem solving collaborative,
Yeah.
not I am here to solve problems for you. I am here to help you figure out what the problems are and maybe to provide some assistance in solving them with you.
Right. I think that's the key, right? Not being in the outside circle, but really being inside
Yeah,
the circle and kind of collaborating with them to, make the change happen. That's fantastic.
absolutely.
And just pivoting to the role that you play in the community, Ellen, right? You've been associated with Agile Alliance, and you've been part of several conferences and several community discussions, and most recently, of course, you and I were part of Agile 20 Reflect panel, where we candidly spoke about so many topics. So when it comes to community, you probably, had a journey of observations, right? Right from the moment you kind of became part of the community to where you are today. The community is coming together to solve several problems. How are you seeing that shift in the mindset of Agilists across the world? Was it more, closed at one point? Is it opening up? What's your observation? Because I'm very interested to kind of see your lens of looking at it because, you're there.
Interesting. So, sorry, I'm thinking about this because,
Yeah.
you know, I think what's bringing the larger Agile community together these days is that recognition. Like I talked about how in my early days I was all about, oh my gosh, I'm going to bring you the Agile, let us do the Agile, here's the way to do the Agile.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of that over the past 20 years, right? And we haven't gotten as far as we thought we might organize, in terms of changing the world by focusing on the how do we bring Agile to the world. There's been, there's been a lot of people need to make money. First of all, I have no problem with making money, but there's been some aspects of how we do Agile that have been very heavily commercialized, and that's been a bit of a problem. And it's also created a bad reputation. For there's a lot of places where Agile has become a bit of a dirty word because an organization has said, hey, we have some problems that need to be fixed. They have bought a very expensive solution from somebody. And it comes in all kinds of flavors. I'm not trying to point at any particular organizations, believe me. And it didn't bring them the change that they wanted. And the result of that was they go, oh, well, we tried Agile. It didn't work for us. But whether what they actually were able to do was actually really, I'll say doing Agile, was actually really practicing
Right.
Agile, putting those Agile principles into practice is a subject for a lot of conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as a community, we're coming together going, okay, so what have we learned? What have we learned from this experience? What have we learned about what's really important, and what really actually helps to move things forward? How do we approach helping organizations change? How do we focus on highlighting more of the things that work and hopefully doing less and spending less time talking about the things that don't?
Yeah.
You know, we're sort of at the period where, and that's how Agile 20 Reflect got started, was the let's reflect back on 20 years of practice and figure out what's going on here. And I think the community is really in a position to do that. And I think there's also a certain willingness to, people will people, right? And in the course of that, Agile is exciting. Look at all the different ways that we can bring Agile to the business world. There were a lot of silos that grew up where I take this particular approach or I advocate that particular approach. And I think there is more recognition that there is no one true way to be Agile, that many different approaches have many different valuable aspects to them, but none of them are one size fits all.
Right.
And that rather than going, hey, my way is better than your way, we should sit down and have a conversation about, hey, what are you noticing about the way your way works? Where does it work? How does it help? Are there places where you're noticing that it doesn't work? And let me tell you the same about the approaches that I've tried. And we're both better off from that if we both broaden our toolkit and our mindset about thinking about how to do that. And I really think that we're at a time and place where the community as a whole is more prepared to do that than they might have been 5 years ago or 8 years ago.
I agree. I agree. I think you really nailed it when you said, I think there is more appreciation and acknowledgement for the fact that, it's not one way of doing Agile. That paradigm just doesn't work anymore because, it's a constantly pivoting and shifting landscape out there. And the organizations are rediscovering themselves. So there's absolutely no way one size fits all. So I think at the least, we all kind of acknowledge now and are in the same space, understanding that it's what fits that organization at that time, right, for their customers.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's something that the practitioners, that the people who've involved in working in an Agile way are coming to realize. I think it's still, it's a hard sell though, because people like to buy certain solutions. People don't like to buy, it depends, but it really does depend. It depends on your context. It depends on your people. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. It depends on what's going on in the world around you. And to think that there's one true way is kind of challenging. But I think yeah, but
And
this
it's
is what I
really,
love about the communication that I'm seeing in the Agile community now, is we're talking about these things openly.
yeah, yeah. So just another context around, I'm just kind of, changing gears here to, the diversity, right? And of course, that Lean and Agile and a community as a whole, I think we are really passionate about gender diversity. Of course, there are a variety of diversities that we need to be considerate of. But just selfishly, right now, if we talk about gender diversity, starting with Agile Alliance, right, Ellen, because you're very closely associated with Agile Alliance and, of course, the community at large. Do you see, a balance that is in the making or, in the development? Of course, we are not at 50-50 right now. We are not in that ideal situation. But do you see that coming through? And I'm not just talking about women in the organizations working in the workforce, but I'm also talking about the way they are engaging in the community. If you talk about conferences, the volunteers, the organizers, the speakers, the participants, and the number of women who are shifting into the Agile workforce, how do you see the current and future landscapes with respect to
It's
gender?
interesting because I think within the technical space, the Agile world has always been more, that there has been more female participation compared to other sort of technically focused environments. When I started this journey, I was working for a multinational telecommunications company, and I was one of 2 women on the team, or one of 3 women on the team. And I remember going to the first Agile event that I went to, the first Agile Coach Camp, and it was much more balanced. There were many more women in the room from the get-go. I think the Agile world has become very aware of this, and because of the focus in Agile, it's really about, at the heart of it is that community aspect. It's about who are the people involved, and we explicitly value diverse opinions. That's at the heart of working of a collaborative team, is we recognize we want to bring different perspectives to the table. So I think the Agile world is paying a lot of attention to this, and perhaps more than other business environments, perhaps, although certainly it's something that's top of mind for everybody these days. So it's great to see. It's great to see that there's much more conscious effort to making sure when we are putting together a conference, for example, or a panel, are we taking into consideration representation? Are we bringing different voices to the table? Are we showing the community we would like to be? And I think that is the step in helping to make sure that we grow into being that community where we are diverse along all of those different dimensions of diversity. And we are making a conscious effort, not only to make sure that people are included and represented, but that we are active, to the inclusion part, that we are actively inviting people in and helping them to be in, because equity and equality are not the same thing, right? So making sure that we are making it possible for people to have a seat at the table is something that is certainly in the Agile world, we are paying a lot more attention to.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely see a surge of women participants in the past 5 years, in fact, more than, ever. So that's very encouraging, and, good to know that we are paying attention. And I think this only needs to accelerate from here. I think the momentum is there. And I think we all, the supporting framework need to kind of, push it up, because I know there are brilliant women out there. They just need to kind of put themselves out there, right? Because, all of us tend to have imposter syndrome and apprehensions. And most importantly, we have the self-dialogue going on that I'm not good enough, or, to apply, to speak, or to go and apply for a job, whatever it might be. But I think it's time that, we all kind of encourage and support the community that go put yourself out there, and things will kind of converge to that.
Yeah, I think there's two halves of it too, though. There's are we making sure that we are supporting people who are doing that? Are we supporting and encouraging? But also, are we looking at the structures that we are bringing people into? And are we making sure that we are, because a lot of the structures about the way the business world works were built around a certain kind of individual participating, or there were certain expectations about what would enable your participation, right? And making sure that we are questioning, we're not just enabling people to run that race, but we're actually changing the shape of the race so that it's possible for more people to take part.
Yeah.
That's a big topic, hard to cover in a quick conversation, but we're paying attention to both sides of it.
Yes, and that's incredible. I think that's something that we need to pay attention to as a community. So this is a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Ellen. I know it was a lot to pack in 20-25 minutes. There's so much to be talked about, but I think we'll have future opportunities to bring these conversations and, involve more women for these, well-deserved topics, in the community. So before we wrap up, Ellen, do you have a message for our audience? It could be just a word, a phrase, and something that you strongly believe in, something which drives you.
Wow, so many things. I think the idea that I really want to put front and center, because we talked about imposter syndrome, we talked about a lot of the sort of the thinking that women in particular bring to the table, where they ask the question, who am I to do this?
Right.
The question is, why shouldn't I do this? What's stopping me from doing this? Why can't I try this? And those all have negatives in them. And I'm trying on the fly to turn it into a positive thing. But I think this is what we need to think about. It's not to think about why shouldn't I, not to think about all of the reasons that I shouldn't do this, but really to ask yourself, no, why shouldn't I do this? I am the right person to try this. What's stopping me from trying this? And to encourage each other to do that. You know, I talked a little bit about something that Kat Sotel tweeted last week about we're not, you know, we're not competing with each other. The only person we're competing with is ourselves.
Right.
Our role, you know, we should be competing with ourselves and encouraging each other. And so how do we help encourage each other to overcome that challenge of, I don't think I'm the right person to do this. You are the right person to try. What do you need? How can I help you to take that step forward? That's what we really need to do with each other, because that helps everybody do better.
Yeah.
That helps everybody do better.
Yes, love that. That's such a profound message. Thank you, Ellen. And I'll definitely kind of internalize that message. It helps each of us, and I think you definitely embody that yourself. So thank you for being yourself, and we wish you good luck with everything that you're currently doing and you're about to do as well. Thank you so much for your time and presence here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Padmini. It's been lovely speaking with you today.